and provide the IGF secretariat with. And also, please do check the link. You can see, because you can have some questions from the audience there as well. And then once we have more attendees on the list, I will also brief them that to ask a question or to request the floor, it is only the Q&A feature, Q&A panel for that. The chat panel is strictly for social conversation.
Okay.
So please do, yes.
Yeah, I haven't received anything on chat, probably because I was late.
Okay, so maybe because you were late. So
yeah.
let me just repeat all this information again to you as you are all here now. You should see it now.
We are not streamed on YouTube yet, or do
we will be. We should be. I mean, now that the live streaming service is on already, and probably the streaming might not be on the YouTube yet, but it can be at any time. So. So please Pavel, please do monitor. I mean, it's up to you how you orchestrate the session and when you would like to answer the questions. But please do have a look at the Q&A panel. If there are any, unanswered questions, this will be my role to remind you that there are still unanswered questions.
Yeah, I've got the idea that we will wait for the Q&A session until the end of our discussion, if it's okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's up to you to decide.
I got the slides, but there are only 2 slides. First with the title of our
the initial
discussion panel, and the second slide is with the names of our panelists. And I think that it would be very useful to show it at the very beginning, but then I would like to stop sharing my screen. Because otherwise probably we will see these slides for the whole session instead of seeing our panelists talking.
Absolutely, you can share the presentation at any time you wish to do so, and also you can stop at any time you would like to stop it. As a panelist, you all have rights to share your screen. Just press the green button at the end of the Zoom screen, and then you will see the content that you have, the files that you have open on your desktop, and you can just click on the one and share it. Will you play any video at this session? No, okay, just the presentation.
So as far as I know, we've got presentation, this short introduction, and also one infographics we would like to present during the session.
Every one of you has the possibility of sharing content. Just use the green share screen button.
Yeah, I will do a test right now.
Please do.
I will share the whole screen to ensure that it works. So
yes, it does. I can see it.
You see it, okay?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe this way. Yeah. Okay, so here's the whole presentation, and then I will turn off my sharing screen mode, and we will just start talking. Okay, so far I am stop sharing.
Okay, so I will just disappear from the screen now. So my colleague and me, we are here, at your disposal, at your service. So if you are in doubt about technicalities, you can always ask us. And then closer, we still have how many minutes? 11 minutes to start. So let's say in 10 minutes, I will just also pass to all participants some important information from the IGF Secretariat. Thank you. Have a successful session.
Thank you very much. All right.
If you would like to chat, we have to chat in English. There was a...
Yeah. Okay.
We can start now in English.
How are you?
Fine.
Oh, we are fine, thank you.
We were a little bit confused with the hour of this session today. Sorry about that. the table was quite confusing because in one column we've got UTC time, and the session was in CET time, and and the YouTube streaming was set for I don't know which time zone, but it was, I think, 3 hours before
3 p.m. 3 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were a little bit confused, but finally we find out, and we are very happy that it didn't make any troubles with your plans. So
let me explain to you. This is your host again speaking. Let me explain to you the reason why the timings given on YouTube are sort of not sort of, they're actually wrong. It's that it's somehow related to Zoom scheduling, session scheduling. There are so many parallel sessions going, and the IGF secretariat, they can't schedule, let's say, 2 parallel sessions at the same time, so that it's even the time displayed in Zoom is different, and that somehow displays a different time on YouTube channel. That's why all attendees should always follow the IGF website and interactive schedule, not the YouTube. Sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, no worries. We were just sharing information about the session with our World Usability Day Silesia community, and we wanted to be sure that we are inviting them on the right time, and that's why I asked about it. Yeah, but finally we are all here, and I hope that there will be some people watching us on YouTube as well as on Zoom this evening.
I saw about 20 people, I think, on the list in our session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I saw as well. I also sent some private invitation to some people from education domain, and also people interested in technology and education. So I assume that we will have some guests on YouTube who will watch us. Yeah. So I believe it will be a very interesting discussion, and what is even more interesting is that when we were planning this session and we were applying to IGF with our paper, we thought that remote, we didn't really know what will go on after vacations, but we assumed that remote learning, distance learning, will not be continued. And after all, it wasn't continued, but it started again right now. So we are very up to date with this session, even if we have had in mind that we will discuss the situation from March to June to 2020, we are discussing things that are happening now. And I think it's a very interesting context of this panel. And it will be very useful for everyone who is a teacher, a parent, or even a student right now. And I hope that we will share a lot of interesting insights for all of the people who are here with us today and who will see recording. I see some guests already. I think Isa is with us. Hello, Isa.
Yes. And Isa was engaged in preparation, so I missed. She's our special guest.
Mm-hmm.
Isa has the microphone off, as attendees don't have microphones on, they're muted.
Of course. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I saw on the list of the sessions similarly entitled panel to our one.
The one which was
I don't exactly remember the title, but I've noticed that it's about similar issue.
I think that LAM Institute was running the panel an hour before us, and I had like 5 minutes to have a look at their panel, and I just heard some discussions more related with digital exclusion, but focused on universal design and inclusive design for people with disabilities. And I think it wasn't focused on education as such. But I'm not sure, because I had only one short, I saw only a short part of it. So.
It was Digital Future for Everyone, how to effectively fight digital exclusion.
Probably this one.
Yeah, I think it was more connected with WSAG standard and stuff connected with digital exclusion for disabled people and people with needs. So it's very there are a lot of things in common, but our discussion will be more focused on education and this remote learning, distance learning. We start in 3 minutes.
We can wait even like 5 more minutes, like 2 minutes after, because usually I know from other sessions experience that some attendees join a little bit later. Even in the course of the session, you might have new attendees joining, as there are many, as I said, I mean, not many, a few parallel sessions going on. So people just hop on, hop off, and they sign up to parallel sessions as well. So that's why at the moment we have signed up to, you can see the list of attendees, right? And I've seen on the IGF website, there are like more than 20 sign up for your session. So let's wait.
I think that we are the only session in this time slot right now. So that's what I think, but I'm not 100% sure.
I'm checking that for you right now. I think there's a session that hasn't ended yet, that started earlier.
Okay.
So let's wait.
Yeah, sure.
A few more minutes. Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Victor. I will be your IGF host for this session. Please be informed that the session is recorded and hosted under the IGF Code of Conduct and UN rules and regulations. The chat regarding the communication in the course of the session, the chat feature is for social chat only, and only the Q&A feature is used to ask a question. So if you would like to ask a question, any of the attendees, please do use the Q&A panel, and the moderator and the host and co-host will monitor that. Thank you very much for respecting this.
Should we start or wait a few more minutes?
I would say it's up to you, and okay. I would say maybe 2 more minutes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
We've got 5 attendees. We are waiting for more,
yes.
And we can start. All right, I think it's time to start. It's 5 past the time we were supposed to start, so I believe it's the best moment to start our discussion panel. Welcome everybody. I would like to welcome our panelists, all of the attendees on Zoom platform, as well as everyone who is watching us on YouTube right now. I will share my screen to introduce you more to the topic of our conversation, as well as to introduce our panelists. 1 second. All right. So the topic of today's panel is various dimensions of technological exclusion in Polish schools. And organizers of this session is World Disability Day Silesia. It's an initiative focused on education, on design, and on responsible design and usage of technology, not only in education field, but everywhere. And me and Kasia, who is one of the panelists today, we are the organizers of this conference since 2010. It's our initiative, which is happening here in Poland, in Silesia region. And why this topic? When COVID-19 pandemic has started and Polish schools were closed because of the lockdown introduced by our government, we were looking for some areas where we could help. A lot of people were doing things that were supporting entrepreneurs, that were supporting medical services. And we were thinking, how can we help and how can we use our competencies to support people who are in need during the pandemic. So we have decided to bring to life the initiative called Zdalne Komplety. It's kind of remote lessons, which were intended to help teachers to manage technology, to use technology during remote classes. And it was one of the reasons we also applied to IGF to share some of our learnings and insights, and also discuss this whole experience with experts who we invited today to explore this very interesting topic. And I would like to welcome our panelists. Dr Barbara Ostrawska from Międzynarodowe Liceum Ogólnokształcące in Lublin. Dr Ostrawska is a psychologist, teacher of knowledge, of the theory of knowledge and psychology. She's the member of Super Belfrzy Rzeczpospolitej. It's an organization which is gathering teachers who are interested in technology and who are promoting technology and modern ways of teaching in schools. She's expert in many non-governmental organizations like Fundacja Szkoła z Klasą. She was also nominated for the Teacher of the Year award in 2018, and she won Edu Inspirator award in 2019. Here with us is also Katarzyna Drożdżal, my good friend and co-organizer of World Usability Day Silesia Conference. She's also the owner of Selkie Agency. She's a psychologist, researcher, one of the co-founders of Zdalne Komplety initiative, and she's also the co-author of publication Digital Transition States, which summarizes the research on influence of COVID-19 on society and technology relation. So I think that Kasia's input will be very interesting because of her technological and research background. We've got Professor Jacek Pżalski from University of Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań. He is the co-author of many scientific publications and papers. His research is focused on electronic aggression, new media, communication at school, and cyberbullying among youth. And the fourth of our panelists, Professor Piotr Plichta from Institute of Pedagogy of the University of Wrocław, author of and co-author of almost 100 scientific papers. His research is focused on the use of ICT by students with social educational needs and disabilities. And also his research interest is on involvement of students with special educational needs in bullying and cyberbullying. And I'm the host of this panel. I will lead this panel. My name is Paweł Nowak. I'm the founder and organizer of World Usability Day Silesia Conference, and also I'm very strongly connected with technology because I'm the computer scientist and practitioner. I'm running my own software design consultancy, and I'm also involved in Zdalne Komplety initiative. So once again, welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. And I think we will start with the first question. But before we start with the questions, I would like to add that we have this Q&A button here on the bottom of Zoom. And everyone who would like to ask the question, please don't hesitate to use Q&A feature in Zoom. And we will try to answer Q&A questions at the end of our discussion. Okay, so let's start. I would like to start with setting the common background for our discussion, and ask you a question: what is digital exclusion and what is remote learning? I think it's very important to have the same definitions. When we will progress with our discussion, we will know that we are on the same page and we have already defined the terms that we will use during our panel. So I would like to ask Professor Jacek Pyżalski to start and tell us a little bit more about the distance learning and as well as digital exclusion.
Yeah, both are basic things for today's discussion, and I think it's better than we talk about digital inequalities instead of digital exclusion, or that is, let's say, a extreme part of the topic, because there are many dimensions we can find and to recognize how differences in usage of technologies, of digital technologies, differ among the people, particularly among young people, because we are talking today about young people, but also the differences among teachers as such. So I think that the digital inequalities are important because they really limit or enhance the potential opportunities that stem from usage of technologies. So all the differences are important. They can be based on these abilities that especially this is the topic of Professor Piotr Plichta, but they also can stem from socioeconomical differences, and they can stem also from competence differences. So the differences in competences concerning ICT use in from general perspective. So that's one thing. I think that we will go deeper. We'll go deeper into those things within our discussion. And how about distance learning? Distance learning. Actually, distance learning is nothing new. In some countries, it was used, like in Australia or in African countries, where when the population is very scattered around the countries, it was known for many years, starting from sending educational packets by post, then from television and radio education, and now to internet education. But now, during the pandemic, it's not the digital or the distance education as we know it. It's different. It's different due to the fact that it covers the whole population. There is no choice. So everybody is doing this, not only those who want it. And this is one difference. Another difference is that actually we faced many challenges that we think that we forgot those challenges, particularly those connected to inequalities, because, you know, for some time, people were even writing the papers, scientific papers, showing that, okay, the first level inequalities don't exist because everybody is possessing the software and hardware. But it happened now that we face this again, even this basic inequalities concerning, for example, one device per the whole family, or the device with not enough quality to go on with the education we know. So that's it. So I think that, to sum up, we've got many dimensions for inequalities, and at the same time we've got the completely new distance education we have to face. And I think that's good that you organize such a panel when we can go deeper into those topics. That's it.
Thank you very much. Who would like to add something to things that Professor Jacek Krzyżacki just said?
Maybe because of my background, I would try to broaden our discussion with other aspects by perspective within which teachers and students, most of all, are users of digital technology. So perspective close to usability and user experience designs, which are preparing technology for which are further are used to distance learning. So from this perspective, distance learning is comprehensive system enabling to achieve educational goals without physical contact of participants of the process. Such a systems is based, what's also quite obvious, on hardware and software designed for this purpose, and actors who use it for educational reason. And I think that this view allows us to indicate problems of exclusions that are anchored in technology adaptation, and it could be something interesting for our discussion. The most popular technology acceptance model by Davis and Bagotti shows that the intention to use specific technology is shaped by two groups of factors: perceived usefulness and perceived ease of use. What is crucial, perceived ease of use having an impact on perceived usefulness. So some solutions are rejected by users because they feel incompetent toward them. So when we try to describe issues which emerge during distance learning, we should notice that its success significantly depends on the level of readiness of teachers, students to use each tools for educational purpose. So it means that not only particular skills and access to tools influence the current quality of distance learning in Poland or in other countries, but it's highly conditional upon internal factors. So it's important because during crisis circumstances, we tend to understand digital exclusion or inequalities as an effect of infrastructural or systematic neglects, which are but fundamentally, scope of the problem is located deeper, as Professor Plichta said, and it means too that obstacles need to be overcome during the multidimensional process of changing attitudes, subjective norms, and self-perceptions of students and teachers regarding the learning implements.
Thank you, Kasia.
May I?
Yes, sure.
Welcome, everybody. Going back to the definition of distance learning, which is a broad, let's say, umbrella term for implementing educational process for those who cannot be present at school. I prefer term distance education because education in Poland has a broader meaning than learning, and apart from didactic activities relating mostly to knowledge, education involves also issues related to upbringing, maintaining relationships, support, psychological needs. So this is the one thing I wanted to add. And as Jacek Żalski said, it's relatively rare situation where students are completely excluded from valued goods like access to ICT or to the broadband internet, but it's more common situation that it's limited. It's so inequalities, I think, in scope of our discussion will be the better term to describe situation of many of our students. Inequalities have, as it was said before, multidimensional character and could be related to technical issues, but at the same time to competences, motivations, support, and when inequalities become too large, may lead to exclusion. And the last thing I think in this part of the discussion I would like to add is to say that digital exclusion, like traditional version, is a sign of kind of discrimination and marginalization, and in fact digital exclusion is let's say another side of the same coin of social discrimination in general. In other words, digital exclusion, it's not only digital issue. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Dr. Barbara Ostrowska, do you have anything to add or to extend this?
Good evening, first of all.
Creating here.
Yeah, I think the only thing I can add, everything was already said. The only thing I can add is that distance learning can have many different forms. And as Professor Pyrzalski said, it has quite a long history. But right now, when we look at distance learning, we can say that there is a more direct or synchronous way of teaching, using tools and being in the same internet space, sort of, in a sense. So trying to mirror that learning that happens at school. But also we can have asynchronous or indirect way of learning, which is more related to students being responsible for their own learning and teachers being sort of more in the background. Although during synchronous learning, this can also happen. So this is the only thing I would add to that definition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So to sum up our definitions, I wrote down some thoughts during when you were presenting your perspective on distance learning and digital exclusion. So instead of talking about digital exclusion, we should be more focused on inequalities, which can lead to digital exclusion. But the digital exclusion as such is not the point in our context of Polish distance learning experiment, let's call it this way. But of course, there are some cases where this full digital exclusion happens, and we have to have it in mind. That's why there are so many initiatives that are helping kids to, for example, people are collecting computers and devices to help children to get classes online right now. When we are talking about inequalities, we are talking about differences. It's the differences in abilities or disabilities. We are talking about socio-economical differences, and also I think there is a huge chapter of competences, digital competences, and that's what Kasia also presented us, that there are some things, some let's call it decision points, which make people to decide why they are selecting technology, because it's easy to use or it's useful. And sometimes this easy of use is more important than usefulness, because it's the game between our competences and our aspirations, what we really want to do. What we also know that this distance education, distance learning, it's the distance learning is a more narrow term, while we should think about distance education. That's what is happening right now. And that distance learning and distance education is nothing new. It already happened via different means. And right now it's we are so focused on it because it's so massive, and it is so we are so attached to this problem because of this COVID-19 pandemic, which is which influences everybody, not only educational system, but all of the complex systems we are part of in Poland and globally. Okay, so thank you very much for this introduction. I hope that all of our attendees and listeners are more on the same page as we are in terms of definitions. And now I'd like to go more into details of what are the challenges. Before this panel, I mentioned already that it's very interesting because when we were applying to IGF, we thought that we will discuss the situation which were happening from March to June 2020, when distance learning was introduced in Poland because of the pandemic, and the schools were closed, so that teachers and kids and their parents have to switch to this distance learning mode and start building educational skills and computer competences, and also change their social interactions and behaviors for months. But this situation is happening again in Poland right now, because the pandemic hasn't stopped. It grew, and it's still growing. So I would like to ask you, could you tell us what were the biggest challenges, or what are the biggest challenges and surprises for teachers and students because of this massive change in the way we teach, in the way we learn? Maybe Mrs. Barbara Ostrowska, if you could start as a teacher. I think you have very, you know it from the first hand.
Okay, my answer will be more anecdotal, I would say, because I'm not a researcher as the other panelists. So from my perspective, what was the biggest challenge at first was that distance learning was so time consuming. And I think this was one of the biggest surprises for many teachers. I am personally a teacher who is not afraid of technology. I am an ICT coach, so technology is my everyday life, and I teach with technology every day. But even though that it happens at school, it was still very, very time consuming, which influenced many other aspects of life. It was both the balance between work and personal life, which was thrown out of the window, basically. I felt for the first 2 weeks as if I am working all the time, and it took me, and I know that for other teachers, it also took a very long time to adjust to that pace of work and to that, I think, method of work. And what I also think was quite challenging is that at first, I think many of us thought it will be temporary, that it will not last for 4 months. So we didn't prepare for that at first. And when it did not finish after the first 2 weeks, then the next 2 weeks, then the next 2 weeks, because it was extended and extended, some of the teachers still felt that they do not need to prepare for that, as it will end at a certain point. But in Poland, we continued to have distance learning, at least in many schools, till the summer holidays. So it was quite surprising when it comes to that. What I think was the biggest challenge for many teachers were the pedagogical practices. I think many teachers thought that they can transfer their lessons like one-to-one to online environment, and it was not that possible. I know that many schools who tried synchronous learning were trying to transfer the schedules of students one-to-one, which meant that some students were spending 6 to 8 hours in front of the computer listening to their teachers, which was quite tiring for everyone, both the teachers and the students. And I know that it still happens, and even in a broader scale right now. Many schools still are dealing with that issue of trying to imitate that offline learning in the online environment, and I don't think this is actually a good way to do distance learning. And I think the third thing that I would like to talk about is the chaos when it comes to the tools that were used. In some schools, there were as many tools as many teachers. There was no sort of centralized method of trying to deal with distance learning. Some schools were sending paper packets to students. Some schools were trying different online tools. Some were synchronous, some were asynchronous. Students were finding links all over the place on their emails, in the digital registers. Many of the platforms did not work very well because of the amount of people trying to access it. So the chaos that happened in the first stages of distance learning was also quite challenging for many schools.
Thank you very much. Before I pass the voice, I would like to ask one thing. You said that teachers were trying to use the same approach as they had used so far in normal education, not during this difficult times we've got. And do you think there is a need to rethink the way we create the timetables for students and the way we engage students in classes in this remote mode?
Yes, I think so. I think that I think there is a need to rethink how school is done in general, and I'm thinking about I think total transformation of school. But I think that during distance learning there is much more space for project work, for interdisciplinary learning, which might be due to collaboration between teachers. And I think that there is no need for like teacher-centered learning anymore, where teacher is the only sort of the sage on the stage, right? So the only person who is speaking. If students want to, students will get bored. And if they need to listen for the teacher for 45 minutes speaking and not doing anything else, they will watch YouTube instead. And they will learn things much faster, believe me. And they will choose YouTube because it will be more fun for them. So definitely there is a need to rethink how education is done in general and in particular in distance learning.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very important thing that that's what was one of our observations and insights from Zdalne Komplety initiative. A lot of teachers told us that there is a problem of attention management of students. So it's very hard to have attention of the student in the classroom. So in the digital classroom, it's almost impossible because you have less tools to influence and to interact with the student. Okay, who would like to continue with the question of the challenges and surprises for teachers and students? Professor, please.
Yes, I can go. Look, we have conducted a study in 34 schools. We have surveyed all the actors. So we have surveyed teachers, parents, and students to ask to go deeper, to ask about the problems they faced during the pandemic, during the lockdown, but also about positive things. So it was like black and white diagnosis of distance education. And to be honest, the whole picture is not that easy to say it's black or white. It's more of gray shades, many shades of. So it depends what you look at. You can say it was a success or it was a failure. And actually, I think the most important thing, also connected to inequalities, I think Piotr will go on with this topic after I finish, is the topic of relationships. We can expect, and we expected this, that when you've got it's so-called mediated communication, it can cause problems because if education is relation, you can say communication is also connected to relation. So when the mode of communication is changed, you can expect that also you will experience the change in relationships, and particularly you can expect this in negative sense. In the negative sense, because you lose something of communication comparing to face-to-face communications. You gain some distance, social distance, and let's say the possibilities to communicate are limited in distance education. So we asked, for example, students about the most important dimensions of relationship. So we asked them about the relationships, peer relationships, and 50% said, okay, they are worse than before the pandemic. So it's a lot of them saying it diminished, it got worse. But to our surprise, and I think it's also worth mentioning here, there were 5%, so 1 in 20, saying we've got better situation. So there is for some a kind of opportunity, and this is also important for discussion, and it's not that easy to interpret, that there is some that gained better peer relationships during the pandemic. It's easier to understand why 50% said it's worse, but it's not that easy to understand this 5%. But it also happened with the situation with the most important dimension of teacher-student relationships. About 1/4, exactly 23%. Claimed that they've now got the worse relation with the teacher than before the pandemic, than before the lockdown. But still, again, there is 4% saying that now we've got better relation with our teacher. So I think this is the challenge, and this is particularly the challenge for the young people with special needs. So this is particularly the challenge for those who even without the pandemic, without the distance education, had problems. Okay, it's also a kind of opportunity for them, because they can gain some or fulfill some of their needs better in online environment. And I pass my voice to Piotr, who I think will continue in details with this relationship and relationships and digital inequalities concerning particular young people with special needs.
Thank you very much. Please, Professor Piotr Plichta.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to also to share my personal experience on teaching remotely. But the story regards teaching students, young adults, and something what was a little bit surprising to me. It took place, I think, 2 weeks after implementing lockdown, and I started online classes and lectures as soon as possible. And the end of one of first lectures, students, I was astonished a little bit by this, expressed their satisfaction and gratefulness for starting real-time meetings as soon as possible. I understood more about the need to staying in touch online, and that is very important also on academic level, not only for children and adolescents, and especially for those with so-called special educational needs. So this is what was really surprising to me. And even when we are talking about young adults, still the most important thing it's about relationships with themselves, but also with the teacher. So this is the personal story, which I think it was very educational for myself. Going back to the question of challenges, the picture is, as Jacek told, complex and depends on different aspects. For example, when we collect the data on distance learning, beginning of lockdown, few weeks later or now, whoever was asked, what questions were raised, and so on. And my general point of view is to some extent optimistic. However, some substantial problems appeared. For example, quality of teachers' digital competencies and low experience in distance education. This is the one thing. The second is that the most serious challenges during lockdown were when one had to deal with, let's say, coexistence of more than one risk factor at the same time. For example, high prevalence of special educational needs in class combined with low teacher self-efficacy and low competencies with distance education and low level of support. So the most serious problems, according to my knowledge, were related to coexistence of risk factors. From my perspective, the thing which is important and problematic and appeared during the pandemic period is that exact amount of so-called disappeared pupils were not counted by relevant institutions. I mean students who didn't participate in lessons, stopped it, or took part rarely. So this is I think which is very, very important, and to my knowledge, it's lack of such data, exact data. As positive, issue. I consider many social bottom-up third sector online initiatives involving teachers and aimed at inequality-related issues in context of distance education. It was really a lot of these initiatives. I think this is all what I wanted to tell at this moment.
Thank you very much. Kasia?
I think that I could try to continue and to summarize according to our experiences with Zdalne Komplety, which Paweł mentioned. As Paweł mentioned, it was our grassroots initiative, which was dedicated to teachers and educators facing with rapid transition to a remote mode of teaching. And we have very similar observation as and I think that consistent with observations from researchers. We could observe that teachers cooperating with us were focused on searching not only attractive tools, but especially on solving basic problems of education. And what is important, the situation was really tense, and I'm thinking about this first episode because simultaneously teachers had to solve basic technical issues and cope with effects of epidemic crisis. So in the first phase, it was connected with shock and chaos, which Ms. Barbara mentioned. So my first insight is that every group which we analyze here, teachers, students, and parents too, because they are important in this picture too, was overwhelmed with non-educational problems, and this context should be emphasized when we try to assess the results of the first months of remote education in Poland. And it's still vital because the process of social coping with crisis is multi-phase. As we know, this epidemic crisis is especially difficult because of the long-term state and because of social isolation which it brings. But it's even difficult in indicate for now in which phase of as a society in this process of coping we are now. Because the dynamics of epidemic is fluctuant. So it's worth noting that from the perspective of students and parents, additional challenges were connected with combining many problems, combining, for example, remote educations of children and remote work of parents. In Poland, 1/3 of surveyed parents working remotely had to share their computers with their children, participating in online lessons in the same time. So it was additional burden for them. So returning to challenges, I think that experiences were very diverse, referring to level of educational systems, and I'm referring to agents and digitalization of a particular school too. So I think that this is the same insight as it was said before. We supported teachers working on different education level, and their observations were consistent with conclusions of Professor Pyżarski research team and with observation of Ms. Barbara. Operationally, the biggest challenge was replacing lecturing methods with activating ones, and that demand using additional time to adapt more sophisticated tools, this is the it leads educators to spend more time for preparing to work. Now, even our consultation made to be example of the additional engagement of teachers, because most of them met with us afternoon or even in the evening, investing their private time for preparation. So I think that it shows how demanding was this time for teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Kasia. As I was listening to you, I realized that we somehow touched the problem of or the challenge of technology and how it was used, and that it was time consuming, and there are different level of competences among teachers, students, and parents, but most of our focus was on relationships. And it's very interesting observation of from our discussion that this bigger impact is connected with the relationship between teachers, between students, between parents and their kids, and it's not so. The technology is something in the background of our discussion. However, as Professor Pyżarski said, we are dealing with the situation where the technology is a mediator between people in taking part in remote learning, in remote education. So we are not interacting with each other, we are interacting with the computers, and we see and hear the audio-visual picture of our peers, and that's a completely different thing for our body or for our mind. Even if we somehow translate that it's a very similar interaction, but it's not. We are not together anymore, and it's this. I think it's the real social distancing, because something that was so-called social distancing in real was a physical distancing. It was we are asked to have this 1.5 meter distance between each other in the shop. But the real social distancing is happening when we are using digital technologies, and we want to sustain our relationships that we have had well established, even if these relationships were sometimes in dysfunctional systems. For example, family system, or even at school. I think we touched a little bit the problem of, I think Professor Pyżarski mentioned it in his research, that some kids were even more satisfied with distance learning instead of going to the school. And the question is why? Maybe the school environment is not the best option for the kid, and maybe he or she is the victim of bullying or because of some other reasons. So it's a very, very complex issue, and we are dealing with many challenges. And I would like to ask another question. It's about the problem of the distance learning and technology. So the question is, what this massive distance learning experiment told us about equal access to technology, and about the digital competencies of teachers, students, as well as the social implications of this whole change. And I would like to start with Kasia.
Okay, so I think that I would start with a broader perspective. At the outset, it's worth highlighting that the COVID-19 pandemic had really great impact on the technology-society relationship. And what is quite obvious, lockdown and social distancing accelerated digitalization of many areas of our life, but including initiatives and services aimed to providing social and psychological support in this crisis situation. So people turn to the digital tools looking for this support, and support groups in social media are growing massively. Facebook reported that only in the United States, from the outbreak of epidemic to May 2020, over 4.5 million users joined online support groups. There is also a huge acceleration in the area of mental health services. Professor Stephanie Vial says on the pages of the conversation, and I would like to quote because it's really essential. In fact, no mental health campaign has ever had as much impact awareness as the one sparked by the COVID-19 crisis. So if we think about this aspect, on the other hand, the power of support based on modern communication technologies also highlights inequalities in access to the internet, because ones who didn't have access or competences couldn't use this support. Tim Berners-Lee, known as a godfather of the internet, in The Guardian said, COVID-19 makes it clearer than ever. Access to the internet should be a universal right. So it means that digital inequalities are visible not only in context of obtaining social support, but also because of the advantages which digital technologies give us. And what shows that if we have access to them, we can maintain our social roles, thanks to remote work, thanks to online public services, contacts with reference groups. So it also matter of unequal access to education when it become remote, and I think that it was said here. So globally, attention is paid especially for poorest countries, where the basic problem is lack of technological infrastructure. But in Poland, the problem of digital inequalities is mainly related to shortages in digital competences. And I would like to mention that Digital Economy and Society Index for 2019 shows that nearly half of our society still lacks basic digital skills, and 60% of Polish businesses, companies have a very low level of digitalization, and 15% of the Polish population does not use the internet yet. So I think that lockdown revealed aspects of digitalizations that we were neglected during the last decade in Poland. A very crucial observation, I think is connected with kind of feedback loop which we can observe between basic digital skills and overall educational level in country. And I'm very curious how my other panelists can continue it basics on the researchers. Thank you.
Yes, Professor Plichta.
The experiment, as you described in your question, it is kind of mirror, as we can agree, maybe every one of us, that revealed state of digital competencies of each of the involved groups. I mean, students, teachers, parents, supervisors, and so on. But good message is that we can see significant improvement in quality of teaching over time. It was confirmed by relevant research. I think Jacek will develop more this issue, and it should be appreciated. That improvement was maybe not very obvious, but it depends on the time the diagnosis were provided. So another thing is that technical dimension of inequalities still, unfortunately, still has significant impact on the quality of distance education, and 1 in 3 teachers confirmed having problems with own ICT tools while educating online, and also 1/3 identified students' problem with internet connection. So still technical dimension of inequalities has significant impact. But perhaps sounds banal, but I believe similarly like Katarzyna, I think that in the long term, the current situation might contribute to positive effects, such as an increased development of digital competencies. But the negative part of my diagnosis is that the experiment to some extent confirmed what we could expect. I mean, difficult situations, the situation of some vulnerable groups, like students with special educational needs, and that it should be known that it's a very diversified group, and within this group there are subgroups who are more prone, more vulnerable than the others, like for example, like students with intellectual disability, especially with lower, let's say, level of intellectual functioning. And therefore, to some extent, we in some cases we could see an exemplification of so-called St. Matthew effect, sometimes simplified to phrase the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So in other words, you can expect that if the experiment will last long term, probably we can expect some negative consequences for those who are most vulnerable among all the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe Dr. Ostrowska, would you like to continue?
Okay. I think that what this experiment shown is that teachers can organize themselves very well, and Mr. Plichta was talking about a lot of bottom-up initiatives from other teachers, and I think this was one of the things that was very visible in Poland. Although there was no centralized professional development, there was no targeted professional development, all of the sudden a lot of different Facebook groups, a lot of different teachers started offering webinars, courses for other teachers for free, just to help them get more comfortable with technology. And I think this was one of the biggest successes, if I can say that, of that pandemic time. But it also showed that a lot of teachers are teaching in a very traditional way and not using technology. And if we look at the population of teachers in Poland, many of them are over 50 years old. So they are not from the times, they were not born in the times where technology was natural to use. And they are still teaching using very traditional teacher-centered methods. And I think these teachers had the biggest problem with transitioning to distance learning. And what it's shown for the students, from my perspective, I think it's shown that students are not very well prepared for using the technology purposefully for educational purposes. And it was quite difficult for them to stay focused when using technology and stay focused on the topic, on the task that the teachers are asking them to do, and not to get distracted by all the other things that are happening in the internet all the time, like social media, for example. I think many students struggled with that focus and with that motivation or competence to use technology for the educational purposes. And I think in the long term, it means that focus not only in distance learning, because this is a trend that I can see in pedagogy right now, need to focus on raising student agency and responsibility so that they become more aware of why they are learning, what is the goal of, and so they can become better prepared for the challenges that learning brings as well. And I think these are the most important things that were visible when it comes to technology competences, digital competences in teachers and students. And if I can address one of the questions in the question and answer, can I?
Of course.
There is a question about the most important competences of the teacher in the times of pandemic. For me, it links to this question. For me, it would be flexibility and resilience, so that teachers can switch to distance learning easily and with no fear, so that they know that they can try and they can make errors, and that's fine, as long as they will keep trying. And I think this is the biggest, the most important competence they can get.
Thank you. Professor Pyrzalski?
Just to sum up from my perspective, to finish my last sentence will be like this, that I think that the whole lockdown situation, the whole distance education during the pandemic has totally destroyed the magic role of technology in teaching. So some people claim that, okay, if you push technology into teaching, there will be a miracle. There will be the modern, good. So we've got the best. We got the best education ever. You know, without technology, there was no education. So we could expect that everything will go smoothly, particularly with young people who easily get into technologies they are totally immersed into. But it was not the case. So we learned that the quality here is much more important than the quantity. And the quality sometimes means really paying attention to details. Paying attention to details, how you use technology, how you perceive and understand the needs of young people, particularly from the perspective of inequalities, and how much technology is far beyond just technical skills. but it's the social use of technology, is how you use the technology to really understand the others, to communicate with the others, to build the community, to build learning community. And it's much more than just to push this button and that button. It's much more. It's much more, and we go deeper. During the pandemic, we issued the free book for teachers, like there was a book with 14 authors showing important things, and we put the iceberg. We put the iceberg on the cover, showing that everybody is watching everybody watching digital education. We see just the people using technologies to teach, but what is under the water, it's much more thing. It's about our ability to maintain relationships. It's our ability to really face inequalities. It's our ability to even take care about ourselves in this process, because it's not that easy. We measured, for example, psychosocial consequences of this situation, and actually the teachers of all the actors, so the teachers compared to parents and compared to young people, really experienced the most difficult consequences when it comes to physical and mental health. So actually, we learned that technology is not the magic that comes into education, that we have to really take care about how the technology is used and what we can expect from the technology and what we cannot expect from the technology. So I think we are more aware now, and we can go into the second phase of lockdown that we are actually just stepping into. We can really take this experience from the time before holidays. We can take this experience, we can think on it, and we can really implement it better now.
Thank you very much. I think that your questions, your answers led us to the last question, and the question that is partially answered already by you, but also the question that I think is impossible to answer in the same time, because it's a question about key lessons learned and how to apply them in remote learning and to make it more efficient and more inclusive. But also it's very important to highlight that it's not only about improvement of distance learning, but it's about improvement of education as such. And if this technology miracle, as Professor Plichta said, that was the false miracle, as we learned so far. Is it something that can we grasp some lessons learned which will make the educational better and more efficient and more inclusive? So that's the last question. And who would like to start? Okay, Professor Plichta, please.
Thank you very much. I would like to start with connection to what Barbara said about the teachers' resilience and flexibility. This is totally right. In my opinion, one of the most significant conclusion going from this big lesson is that it's not maybe a very obvious conclusion when we are talking about distance learning, but it's really important to take into account and take measures to support teachers' well-being. We, with Jacek Pyżalski, analyzed the content of teachers' discussions on Facebook during the pandemic, and the vast majority of statements expressed frustration, dissatisfaction, and helplessness. And another finding was a low number of teachers clearly describing where they are able to find support in the current situation. And this is I think that maybe not very obvious conclusion, but teachers' well-being and supporting them is often a key to pupils' well-being also. So this is the one thing. I have a few recommendations that could be useful when we are talking about a more inclusive manner of distance education. The first is before distributing tasks to be done by students, assessments of their accessibility of digital technologies should be carried out. The second, especially for those who require the strongest support, the priority is not the didactic aspect of education, but basic needs such safety, belonging, maintaining relationships. The third aspect, in my opinion, is increasing the accessibility and optimizing materials for distance learning. I'm special educator, so my particular focus is concentrate on groups like special educational needs and students with disability. This optimizing and increasing accessibility means, for example, providing simple, understandable text, clear visual layout of websites, of materials, audio description, and so on. So this is the third one. Maybe it's important to add that it's a strong need to maintain a balance between synchronous and asynchronous means of communication with students and asynchronous teachers' presence, such as pre-prepared video materials, tutorials, also offer advantages for students, such the possibility of unlimited access to the material. They can rewind and rewatch parts of material that weren't fully clear to them without having to ask for help for additional explanations. So this kind of balance between synchronic and asynchronous means of communication is important. And maybe for the end of my answer is I would also say that cooperation between users with special educational needs, special educators and IT specialists, digital designers should be strengthened. It should be more inclusive research within this area and conduct analysis of user experience, especially with regards to those with cognitive disorders. We still don't know a lot about optimizing materials for such groups in terms of digital education. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to follow up?
I can follow up because I think that what I would like to share is a natural transition from what Mr. Plichta said. Can I share my screen?
Of course, yes, please.
Okay, I will try to share the infographic that is based on a very recent. Can you see that? Is it visible? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. This is an infographic that is based on quite a recent podcast that was done by among others by Marcin Zarut. who is a teacher, and he, I think, very nicely summarized something that he called the 10 Commandments of remote learning. And these are actually good practices that I think should be implemented within distance learning. So, first of all, to reduce the chaos of the many tools that are used in the school, it's best to choose one platform and to stick to a couple of tools that are already known to the students, so that they do not have to learn new tools at every lesson. I was talking quite a lot about transferring on offline method to online learning, and I think this is quite important to develop the didactic of online learning. This is something also for the universities, because I don't remember from my education to be taught about online learning in general. So I think some kind of professional development for the teachers when it comes to methods of distance learning, distance teaching, developing that by the universities as well is quite important. Then remembering that success is dependent on mindset, skill set, and tool set, and all three things need to be there so that the education is effective. So preferably a growth mindset, then skills of both teachers and students to be able to perform the tasks in the online environment, and then the tools and the methods that we can use. Professor Plichta was talking about the well-being. I fully agree with that. Both the teacher well-being and the student well-being should be in focus when it comes to distance learning. This is very important. I do also agree that there should be balance between synchronous and asynchronous mode, and this should be something that is based on some kind of assessment of the needs of the students and possibilities of the students. Because sometimes it will be true that there is one device in the household and students cannot fully participate in asynchronous learning. So this balance should be adjusted to actually the students that we are teaching. The sixth one was, do not forget that we are still in the beta mode. So we are still in a hit and miss mode. We can try, we can err, that's fine, as long as we try and try again. Then the motivation of the students is also very important. And I think that motivating students in distance learning is especially challenging. And this is something that should be discussed in a broader sense, I guess. The eighth one, I didn't talk about it, but I would like to talk about it now, assessment. This is a huge part. And I think one of the challenges as well in Poland was that teachers were trying to use the assessment methods, the same assessment methods in the online environment. So, for example, there were lessons where for 20 minutes, they were trying to orally assess students instead of actually connecting with them. And this is something that needs to change. And I think that we need to develop new forms of assessment, or think of new forms of assessment, and especially about formative assessment. And providing good quality feedback to the students in this online environment. And we have endless possibilities thanks to the internet. It's just a matter of switching our mindset. The last two, assigning meaningful homework, if any. Students are spending enough time online when they are learning. So maybe it's time to get rid of homeworks as we know them at all. Or in a at least to a large extent. And last but not least, less is more. Less tools means that we can have more time to develop meaningful relationships. We can work as efficiently as before. And I think this very nicely this very nicely summarizes the key lessons that we should implement in distance learning right now when we are still in that mode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one sentence that I think that we as the teachers should be researchers, so should observe what is going on and really take care and look and learn from our mistakes, not to be afraid we will make many. So it's really something that we have to reflect, that we have to be more and more aware, to really observe the students, to see how the students answer to our educational measures, what we do, to really observe what is going on about the relationships, about the whole situation, about the whole process. And I think, okay, nobody knows. It's not like that we can refer to someone like the great thinker who will tell us how to do this. Actually, we have to observe, and we have to really follow what we are doing, and really to be at the same time the doers and the observers. So I think this is something that we can benefit from. And that's it. Nothing more from me for today.
Thank you very much.
I have to go. Actually, I have to say goodbye. I have to go now. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Kasiu, could you share with us your answer?
Yes, so I think that I can say, after listening our discussions and very interesting and crucial insights from professors and Dr. Barbara, I think that that's my impression, that our educational system will never be the same after months of distancing and digital compensation. The brighter side is the fact that new competences, expanded infrastructure is an investment for the future. I think that it's kind of investment, and it will bring something for our modern educational system. Very crucial conclusions are connected with the overall presence of digital technology in schools and in lives of young people. I think that it's very important. It's really important for me as a parent too. So the learning first episode exposed very important issues connected with digital hygiene, what the Professor Plichta mentioned, and basic assets for developing digital abilities of students, and hold this social background, which is really important. I remember that a few years ago there was a revealed four-dimensional educational four-dimensional education for sustainable societies kind of model, which showed that key abilities and skills are connected not only with these areas of knowledge and skills, but also with character and meta learning aspects. And in my opinion, in Polish educational system, it's really important to highlight this part, because it's still important to extends our curriculums of these parts as a meta learning, as a broader concept of using digital technology. So I think that this critical situation showed that new aspects of our educational system. And in last words, I would like to agree with observation which were mentioned about grassroots bottom-up initiatives. yeah, I observed it too, and during the first lockdown, the strong movements of private individuals, private businesses, companies gathered, for example, computer and basic devices for students in need, and scale of this engagement was really impressive. And I think that it's a lesson for me that there is high educational potential in activating individual experts, private businesses to find the way of supporting our educational system. And this crisis showed that there is the potential, that it proved that there is readiness to engagement. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kasia. So it was the last question that I have prepared for today. Before we go to Q&A, I think we can spend 5 more minutes to answer the questions of our attendees. I would like to thank you for all of your answers and your knowledge and insights that you have shared. What I have realized during our conversation that according to the title of our panel, there are various dimensions of digital exclusion, but also there are various dimensions of education and various dimensions of relationships. And it creates much more complex system and complex environment that we should think of and that we should observe and discuss. And if we plan or apply some new strategies or interventions, we shouldn't have in mind only technological aspect of remote education, distance learning, but we should focus also on relations, on situation at home, on inequalities, many different forms of inequalities, and the education as such. So it's a much more complex thing that we initially thought, or I initially thought before this panel. So thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us and observations. I think we've got 2 questions, but one was already answered. So I will read the question that we will address right now. A question for all panelists: what are the perspectives in your different institutions? Just waiting for this pandemic to be over, or start preparing for a different future? If so, what are the plans for the short and medium-term plans for adapting in a better way that conventional model to distance education through internet? Anyone who would like to address this question?
Okay, I can start.
Oh, please.
I think, to be honest, I think that the schools are waiting for the pandemic to be over. There is not much forward thinking, I guess, at least in the schools that I know. And of course, many schools are implementing technology and are starting to teach, for example, in bring your own device mode, so that students are interacting with technology during lessons one-on-one, or there is a broadband internet that schools have. But I think that still mentally we are waiting for the pandemic to be over and to go back to the good old teaching.
Okay. Anyone would like to add something to this answer?
it was a very complex question to answer. I've learned a lot during the pandemic. It maybe sounds how to say. I'm not so fluent enough to say it in English, but my personal feeling is that I've learned a lot, and I hope that this lesson will be fruitful through our future, which is unstable, unpredictable, fluent, and so on. So what I'm going to do is to do my best. However, it may sound banal. So concentrate on my tasks to be done. Even if objective circumstances like this factors from macro level, even if these factors are bad or are barriers for optimal functioning, still I will do my best and will try to learn and be as good as possible in this difficult educational moments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Kasia would like to add something, or?
Yes, we have reminders that we are running.
We are out of time, but I would like to.
Yes, it's really difficult to answer in few words, so I just say it's specific liminal time. And I think that the resilience, flexibility, which was mentioned before, is something really important, and I think that we experience it in every aspect of our life now. So yes, so everything what I can add in so short time. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, and I think it's even less about planning right now. It's more about sensing or probing what is happening and responding to the situation. So the situation is so complex that there are, I think, that people are not thinking strategically. Rather, they are focusing on here and now and trying to respond to the situation as they can, and that's what's happening right now. But I think the one of the most important observation is that everyone realized that technology is not a silver bullet which solves problems, but it's also the cause of many new problems that we haven't knew about it. And we also realized that relationships are so important in our lives, and this social distancing and lockdown is causing a lot of troubles for our bodies, for our minds, and probably we will never change the normal education with only remote education, but probably in the future we will have more and more hybrid ways of interacting with students and teachers and learning via new mediums. So that's what we with that. Okay, I think we are out of time. So thank you very much once again. It was a pleasure to lead this panel, and
thank you very much.
This is your host speaking. On behalf of IGF Secretariat, I would like to thank you very much for your participation at the IGF 2020. And one more request to all of you, please leave your feedback to the form you will be redirected to after closure of this session. Thank you all very much indeed. Bye-bye.
Will you share this feedback form on chat here, or
no? You will be directed. You will be redirected after the session get closed. After closure, you will be redirected to this session by default.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, feedback. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.